Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating world of family businesses.
Yeah?
And to guide our exploration,
Mm-hmm.
we've got excerpts from a great resource, the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook. It's chock full of insights
Oh, yeah.
that I think can really help us understand these unique businesses,
Yeah.
the dynamics, the challenges, the opportunities.
It's interesting because family businesses really are their own unique animal, right?
Say,
It's almost like a three-dimensional chess game.
I like that.
You've got all the individuals involved, of course,
Right.
with their own personalities and ambitions. Then you've got the relationships between those people, the family ties, the history.
Yeah.
And then layered on top of all that, you've got this intricate web of unspoken rules and expectations that come with being a family.
Right. It's like a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape.
Absolutely.
The book actually starts with this anecdote that really brings this to life. A story about a family fight that erupted over, of all things, rose bushes.
Rose bushes. Wow.
This successful family business nearly imploded because someone pruned the wrong branch.
Kidding.
I know, right? It sounds almost comical.
It does, but
But as the book digs deeper, it becomes clear that
Yeah.
that seemingly trivial incident actually exposed some deep-rooted issues within the family's decision-making process.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how even the smallest things,
Yeah.
can become symbolic of larger power struggles
Oh, for sure.
and these unresolved tensions that are simmering beneath the surface.
It's not really about the rose bushes themselves, is it?
No, exactly. It's about control, right?
Yeah.
About who gets to decide what happens in the metaphorical garden of the business.
Precisely. And that leads us, of course, to one of the most crucial aspects of any family business ownership.
Oh, absolutely. The big O.
In the book, they break down the 5 core rights that owners hold. The right to design the business, the right to make decisions, the right to determine its value, the right to access information, and finally, the right to transfer ownership.
It's interesting because those rights, they can be incredibly powerful tools for building a lasting legacy.
Without a doubt.
But as we all know, they can also be incredibly destructive if they're not managed carefully.
Oh, absolutely. They're a double-edged sword.
The book actually uses this really compelling cautionary tale, the Market Basket Saga. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I remember that. That was a wild one.
It was. This was a family-owned grocery chain that nearly destroyed itself
Wow.
through this incredibly bitter battle over ownership control. We're talking lawsuits, boycotts, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how these internal conflicts, especially when they're tied to ownership disputes,
Right.
they can have this ripple effect, impacting everyone, not just the family, but employees, customers, suppliers, even the whole community.
Exactly. And what makes it even more complex is
Mhm.
family businesses often operate outside the norms of typical businesses, right?
Absolutely.
Their internal conflicts can be even more impactful and so much harder to resolve.
They're definitely a different breed.
So I guess the question is, where do we even begin to untangle all of this?
Well, a good starting point, I think, is understanding the different types of family ownership structures that exist out there.
Okay, that makes sense.
The book outlines 4 main models. First, you have the sole owner, where one person calls all the shots.
Okay.
Then there's the partnership model, where 2 or more people share the ownership and decision-making.
Right.
You also have distributed ownership. We see that a lot in larger families. Ownership is spread out among multiple family members.
Got it.
And finally, there's the concentrated model, where a smaller group within the family, maybe just a few siblings, holds the majority of the control.
It's fascinating to see how these structures can evolve over time.
Oh, yeah.
The book mentions the Antinori wine dynasty. This family has been in the wine business for, get this, 26 generations.
26 generations. That's incredible.
It really is. They've clearly adapted their ownership structure over the centuries, right,
Yeah.
to fit the changing dynamics of their family and the demands of the business.
They are a true testament to the fact that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
What works for one family business might be a disaster for another.
That's where the book's 4-room model comes in.
Okay.
This framework really clicked for me
Yeah.
because it provides a way to visualize how decisions should ideally flow within a family business.
I like visuals. Tell me more about this.
So picture a house with 4 distinct rooms. Okay. You've got the owner room where the owners gather to define their vision, their goals for the business.
Got it.
Then you have the boardroom
Mm-hmm.
where strategic decisions are made, often with input from outside advisors.
Makes sense.
Then there's the management room where the day-to-day operations, the nuts and bolts of running the business happen.
Right.
And then, of course, you have the family room, where, well, family matters are discussed and relationships are nurtured.
It sounds simple enough, but...
It does, but here's the catch, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep those rooms distinct,
Right.
yet also interconnected?
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And the book has this great story about Steve the cowboy, this really charismatic entrepreneur who ran his business like a one-man show.
Oh, I think I remember Steve.
That impulsive shoot-from-the-hip style, it worked great for him for a while.
Sure.
But as the business grew and more family members got involved, his solo decision-making started creating a ton of tension.
Yeah.
The other co-owners felt excluded.
I can see how that would happen.
Right. And those family relationships started to fray.
Oof.
It wasn't until they implemented a formal governance structure, requiring Steve to actually get approval for major decisions, that things started to improve.
It sounds like he needed to learn that you can't just gallop off in any direction you please.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. He needed to get everyone on board,
Yeah.
moving towards the same destination.
And that brings us to what I think is one of the most crucial, yet often overlooked, elements of success in any family business. Trust.
Oh, absolutely.
Trust is the glue that holds everything together.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
especially important in a family business where personal and professional lives are so intertwined.
Right.
The book really emphasizes the importance of building trust through open, honest communication, highlighting 4 key elements: competence, openness, concern for others, and reliability.
I love those 4 pillars. Those are great. It makes me think of Sophie's story from the book.
Oh, Sophie. Yeah, what happened with her?
She was this really talented family member,
Uh-huh.
but she ended up feeling completely alienated from the business, all because of a lack of communication.
Oh, that's tough.
It is, and it goes to show,
Yeah.
even with the best of intentions, without that clear communication,
Yeah.
things can really go off the rails.
That's why it's so important to have a deliberate, planned communication strategy.
I agree.
It's not just about what you say, right?
It's the how, the when, and to whom.
Exactly. You need to really consider your audience.
Yeah.
Family members who are actively involved in the business need a different level of detail than those who aren't. Employees need to be kept in the loop, but they don't need to know about every family squabble.
It's such a delicate balance, but
Yeah.
when it's done right, when that communication's flowing,
Yeah.
it can create this incredible sense of shared ownership and purpose.
Even if not everyone has an equal say in the day-to-day operation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that shared sense of purpose is what allows family businesses not only to survive,
Yeah,
but to truly thrive.
I agree.
It helps them navigate challenges, make smooth transitions,
Especially when it comes to passing the torch to the next generation.
which is actually a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive.
Oh, looking forward to that.
We're going to explore this crucial topic of succession planning, how family businesses can make sure that transition to the next generation is smooth and successful.
It's going to be a fascinating discussion. I'm excited to dive into that.
Me too. And I think we're going to uncover some really insightful strategies along the way.
Definitely. I think this is one that a lot of people struggle with.
It's definitely a big one, so stay tuned.
Will do.
Welcome back to our deep dive into family businesses. We're really digging into the inner workings of these fascinating entities with insights from the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook. We've covered a lot of ground already, from those different ownership structures to decision-making frameworks. And of course, we talked about that all-important element of trust and how to build it through communication. But now I think it's time we shift our focus to the future.
The future. Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
It does, because today we're going to tackle that big, sometimes scary topic of succession planning.
Succession planning. Oh, yeah. That can be a tough one.
It can be.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see it as this daunting, once-in-a-lifetime event. But you know what? It's really an ongoing process.
I agree. It's not something you just do once and then forget about it.
Exactly. It's about making sure the business stays healthy, stays vibrant for the long haul.
Right. And that means preparing the next generation to take the reins. It's much more than just handing over the keys to the castle, so to speak.
It is. It's about preparing the kingdom for new leadership and preparing those heirs to rule wisely.
Well said. The book actually breaks down a successful continuity plan into 3 key elements.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, you have the transfer of assets.
Okay, assets, that makes sense.
But it's not just financial assets we're talking about here.
Right.
It's also things like intellectual property, the brand reputation, those intangible assets that are so valuable.
Those can be even more valuable sometimes.
Absolutely. Then you have the shifting of roles and responsibilities.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is, and it requires a lot of careful thought, clear communication to make that happen smoothly. And finally, and I think this is the most important part, developing the capabilities of the next generation.
Preparing them, making sure they're ready.
Exactly. Give them the tools they need to succeed. This reminds me of that story in the book about the three brothers who inherited their family's pest control business.
Oh, yeah, the pest control guys. What did they do?
They decided to split the company into three separate entities, each brother taking ownership of a different part of the operation.
That's interesting, dividing it up like that.
It is, and it's a fairly common approach, especially when you have siblings who have different skills, different interests.
Makes sense.
But it's not without its risks.
What do you mean?
Well, that division, it can sometimes lead to fragmentation,
Oh, I see.
competition between the siblings, and in some cases, it can even contribute to the eventual decline of the family's overall business empire.
So it's not as simple as just splitting things up equally.
It isn't, no. You have to think about the long-term implications, have a plan in place to deal with those potential conflicts that might arise down the line.
So there's no easy answer, no one-size-fits-all solution.
Not when it comes to family businesses, that's for sure. Each family has to find what works best for their unique circumstances. And that brings us to a really important concept the book talks about, the owner strategy.
Okay, owner strategy, what's that all about?
It's about defining what success actually means for the family as a whole.
Beyond just the financial bottom line.
Exactly. It's about figuring out the purpose of the business, the long-term goals, and the values that are non-negotiable for the family.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like creating a shared vision for the future.
Exactly. The book gives this interesting example of a surfing brand company founded by two sisters. They had very different ideas about the direction of the business. One sister was all about rapid expansion, wanted to grow, grow, grow.
The other sister was more cautious.
Yes, the other sister preferred a more measured approach, focused on profitability and returning profits to the owners.
Sounds like a recipe for conflict.
It was. They butted heads constantly because they didn't have that shared vision, that clear owner strategy in place.
So they were essentially playing the same game, but with different rule books.
That's a great way to put it. Having a well-defined owner strategy, it's crucial. It aligns everyone's expectations, helps minimize conflict, and makes sure everybody's rowing in the same direction.
So it's like a compass, guiding the family and the business towards that shared destination.
Perfect analogy. And speaking of navigating a journey, every family business, every business really, faces its share of unexpected bumps in the road.
The storms, the detours, the unexpected roadblocks.
Exactly. The book calls these disruptions, and they can really throw everything up in the air.
Those life-altering events that shake things up.
Precisely. We're talking about things like the death of a key family member, a new spouse entering the family, financial challenges that put the business at risk, those kinds of things.
Those are the big ones, the curveballs that life throws at you.
They are, and the book actually highlights 4 main types of disruptions that family businesses really need to be prepared for.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear them.
Well, let's start with the toughest one, the one nobody really wants to talk about, but it's essential to address: death. Losing a founder, a key leader, it creates a huge void.
Emotionally, practically.
Both. You're grieving the loss, and at the same time, you have to navigate all these complex issues around estate planning, succession, manage the emotional impact on the whole family.
With a lot to handle all at once.
It is. And the book shares this really poignant example of the Johnson family. When the patriarch died suddenly, they were completely unprepared. They hadn't discussed estate planning, there was no clear succession plan in place, and the result was chaos.
That sounds heartbreaking.
It was. The family ended up infighting, and ultimately they had to sell the business.
Well, what a stark reminder of how important it is to have those tough conversations early on.
It is. It's not about being morbid. It's about being responsible. It's about making sure the business, the family legacy, can continue.
Absolutely. So what's the next type of disruption?
New entrants into the family, often through marriage.
Yes, the in-laws.
It's not always easy to integrate a new spouse into the family business dynamics.
It can be tricky, especially if the spouse has strong opinions, their own ideas about how things should be run.
Right, and the book stresses the importance of treating new family members with respect, being inclusive, making them feel welcome from the start.
That makes sense. But how do you balance that with protecting the business, especially if the marriage doesn't work out? I've heard prenuptial agreements mentioned in this context.
They can be helpful, yes, but it's important to approach them with a lot of sensitivity, transparency.
Not to make the new spouse feel like an outsider.
Exactly. It's about protecting the business and the family's assets, not excluding anyone.
Makes sense. What's the next disruption on the list?
Inequality.
Inequality. Interesting.
It can be subtle, but it can be a really powerful force that undermines trust and creates division within the family.
And we're not just talking about financial inequality.
No, it can also be about disparities in opportunities, responsibilities, or even just perceived status within the family.
Right, like if one sibling is seen as the favorite, always getting the best opportunities, the most praise.
Exactly. That kind of thing can breed resentment, and it often spills over into the business.
Creating factions and undermining collaboration.
Exactly. The book reminds us that some level of inequality is unavoidable, especially as families grow, different branches pursue different paths. The key is to manage it in a way that feels fair to everyone involved. Transparency is key.
Make sure everyone understands how decisions are made, how compensation is determined, how opportunities are allocated.
That's right. It's about fostering a culture of fairness and respect, even when those differences in wealth and status exist.
Makes sense. Okay, what's the last disruption we need to be aware of?
This one's often the hardest to talk about: behavioral health issues.
Oh, that's a sensitive topic for sure.
It is. It's often taboo, shrouded in shame and secrecy, but ignoring these issues can have devastating consequences.
For the individual, the family, the business, everyone.
Right. We're talking about things like addiction, mental health challenges, even just personality clashes that can create a toxic environment.
Those are tough situations. How does the book suggest we handle them?
The book shares some really tough stories about how these issues, when they're not addressed, can spiral out of control. We see broken relationships, financial ruin, legal battles. It's heartbreaking.
It really underscores the importance of breaking the stigma around mental health and addiction.
Absolutely. It's about creating a culture of support within the family, a place where it's safe to talk about these issues, to seek help without fear of judgment or repercussions.
Early intervention is key, and often professional help is needed.
I agree. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about challenges, but let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the positive side of working in a family business.
Oh, I like that. Focusing on the good stuff.
Because there is a lot of good, right?
There is.
There's something really special about working alongside your family, building something together, carrying on a legacy. There's that sense of purpose, belonging, shared achievement that's hard to find in other types of businesses.
It's like weaving your own family tapestry, adding your threads to this rich fabric that's been passed down through generations.
That's a beautiful image.
So, for family members who are thinking about joining the business, what advice does the book offer?
Well, first and foremost, they encourage you to treat it like a career decision, not just a job. Ask yourself, are you truly passionate about this business? Do your skills and interests align with the company's needs? Are you ready to make a long-term commitment?
It's about finding that sweet spot where your personal aspirations meet the goals of the family business.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the value of outside experience.
Working in a different environment, getting a different perspective.
Exactly. It allows you to bring fresh ideas to the table, and you're not just seen as the boss's kid.
You've earned your stripes elsewhere.
Right. So let's say you've weighed all the options, done your homework, and you decide to join the family business. What should you expect?
What's it really like working in that environment?
Well, be prepared for life under a microscope. Everything you do, every decision you make will be scrutinized.
By family members, by employees.
Everyone. You'll be held to a higher standard, and people will always be looking for ways to interpret your actions through the lens of your family connection.
So it's important to be self-aware, avoid flaunting your status, be respectful of boundaries.
Exactly. It's about earning respect, not expecting it just because of your last name.
Work hard, prove yourself, let your results speak for themselves.
Couldn't said it better myself. Now let's not forget about those non-family members who are so essential to the success of any family business.
They bring so much to the table, their expertise, their dedication, their fresh perspective. But it can't always be easy for them navigating the complexities of a family business.
It can be tricky, for sure. They're walking this tightrope, trying to balance professional relationships with those family dynamics that are always present.
What advice does the book have for them?
Be discreet. Avoid getting caught in the crossfire of family disagreements and focus on building stronger relationships based on mutual respect and trust.
Sometimes the best approach is to stay in your lane, do your job well, and let the family handle the family stuff.
Wise words. Now let's shift gears again and talk about one of the most sensitive topics in family businesses, family employment policies.
Okay, yeah, this is a big one.
It is, and it's so important to set clear expectations, prevent misunderstandings, avoid any accusations of favoritism.
This reminds me of Omar's story in the book.
Oh, yes, Omar. What a difficult situation that was.
He joined his family's business, a ladder and scaffolding company, full of enthusiasm and ready to contribute. But pretty quickly, he became disillusioned.
It happens, unfortunately.
He felt underappreciated, his contributions weren't recognized, and the lack of clear communication just created a lot of tension.
That's why having a formal employment policy is so important. It outlines the qualifications for family members working in the business, sets clear guidelines for compensation, expectations for performance, and even addresses exit strategies.
It creates a level playing field.
It does, where family members are treated fairly, but they're not given special treatment just because of their last name.
They need to earn their place, just like any other employee.
Exactly. And if it's not working out, if a family member isn't a good fit for the business, there needs to be a respectful and clearly defined process for separation.
That can be really tough when you're dealing with family.
It can be, but having those guidelines in place can help protect both the business and those family relationships.
It's like having a safety net, knowing that there's a plan in place, even if things don't go as planned.
Exactly. So let's move on to another crucial aspect of family businesses that's often overlooked: managing family wealth.
Okay, wealth management. That's a big topic.
It's not just about making money. It's about preserving and growing that wealth for future generations. And it's about making sure that wealth doesn't become a source of conflict or a sense of entitlement.
That's a real danger, especially when you have multiple generations involved.
It is, and the book uses this really interesting analogy: keeping wealth in the cave.
Keeping wealth in the cave? I like that. What does it mean?
It refers to that tendency of some families to keep all their wealth concentrated in the core business. They resist diversifying. They see it as a way to maintain control, protect the family legacy.
Like hoarding all that gold in a secret cave, guarding it fiercely.
That's a great image. But this approach can be risky. If the business hits hard times, the entire family fortune is at stake.
So you're saying it's important to diversify.
Absolutely. The book encourages families to think about investing in other assets, creating a portfolio that can weather any economic storm.
Having multiple streams flowing into that river of family wealth. So even if one dries up, the others keep flowing.
Love that analogy. Another important aspect of managing wealth is establishing a clear dividend policy.
Okay, dividend policy, that's about how much profit goes back into the business versus how much is distributed to the owners, right?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between the needs of the business and the financial needs of the family. And transparency is key here, too. Everyone should understand how these decisions are made and why.
It helps prevent those feelings of resentment, ensures that everyone feels like they're being treated fairly. Now, let's talk about something that I think a lot of families struggle with: avoiding the dreaded entitlement trap.
Ah, yes, the entitlement trap.
It's that feeling that you deserve special treatment, that you're entitled to privilege and luxury without having to work hard or contribute to society.
Like you were born on third base and think you hit a triple.
Exactly. And the book makes this really interesting point. Entitlement isn't something kids are born with. It's a learned behavior.
It is, and unfortunately, it's often fostered by well-meaning parents who want to protect their children from hardship.
They overindulge them, shield them from the consequences of their actions.
It's like raising orchids in a greenhouse. They look beautiful, but they wilt the moment they're exposed to the real world.
So how do we break that cycle of entitlement? How do we raise children who are grounded, responsible, and understand the value of hard work?
The book offers some great advice. Encourage your children to work, even from a young age. Instill a strong work ethic. Let them experience setbacks and teach them that earning their own way is something to be proud of.
It's about raising children who aren't just heirs to a fortune, but also inheritors of a legacy of hard work, responsibility, and generosity.
Well said. Okay, are you ready to tackle one of the biggest, most challenging aspects of family businesses?
Bring it on. What is it?
Conflict management.
Ah, yes, conflict. It's like a weed in the garden. It's bound to pop up from time to time. The key is to keep it from choking the life out of the beautiful plants we're trying to grow.
I love that analogy. And in family businesses where emotions run high and personal relationships are so intertwined with business decisions, conflict can escalate quickly.
The book talks about something called the conflict spiral.
Yes, the downward spiral where those small disagreements escalate into these huge battles. You end up with resentment, broken relationships, even legal action.
It can be really destructive.
It can destroy everything. And the book urges families to be aware of the warning signs and to take steps to de-escalate the situation before it's too late.
So, what are some of those de-escalation strategies?
One of the key things they suggest is moving away from what's called positional bargaining.
Positional bargaining, what's that?
It's that approach where each side digs in their heels, refuses to budge. It just leads to more conflict.
So, instead of digging in our heels, what should we do?
The book encourages a more collaborative approach. Remember that you're all on the same team. Working together is the best way to achieve a positive outcome.
It's like remember that you're all tending the same garden.
Exactly. You might disagree on the best way to prune a particular plant, but you both ultimately want the garden to thrive.
But sometimes, those family feuds become so entrenched that it's hard to see the garden through the weeds.
That's when it might be helpful to seek outside help.
A neutral third party.
Exactly. A mediator, a therapist, even a family business advisor, someone who can provide an objective perspective, help the family communicate more effectively.
Like bringing in a master gardener to help restore harmony to a garden that's become overgrown with weeds.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that conflict isn't always a bad thing.
Really, conflict can be a good thing.
It can, believe it or not. When it's handled constructively, it can lead to greater understanding, spark innovation, and ultimately strengthen relationships.
It's like pruning a plant. It seems harsh at the time, but it helps the plant grow stronger in the long run.
That's a great way to put it. Now, for those families who are looking for more support in managing their business and their wealth, the book introduces the concept of a family office.
Okay, a family office. Tell me more about that.
A family office is basically a dedicated team of professionals who handle the complexities of managing family wealth, investments, even family dynamics.
So it's like having a team of expert gardeners who can help you take care of every aspect of your family's estate.
I like that. They can bring expertise, objectivity, and peace of mind.
And the book goes into detail about the different functions of a family office, from financial management to philanthropy to educating and training the next generation. They even discuss different types of family offices, from those that are embedded within the business to those that are independent.
It really depends on the needs of the family, the complexity of their assets.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not. A family office can be a valuable resource, but it's important to remember that setting one up is a big commitment. It requires careful planning, clear governance, and buy-in from the whole family.
So we've talked a lot about the challenges, the opportunities, the support systems that can help family businesses thrive. But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier: the importance of maintaining control and preserving family values as the business grows.
It's about staying true to your roots, even as the business adapts to changing market conditions and brings in outside expertise.
Making sure those values that have guided the business from the beginning continue to shape its decisions and its culture.
And that's something we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at some of the potential pitfalls that family businesses need to be aware of and discuss strategies for ensuring that the family legacy remains strong and vibrant for generations to come.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of family businesses. We've been really exploring the ins and outs of these unique entities, using the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook as our guide. We've talked about everything from those ownership structures and succession planning, even all the way to managing conflict. But now, as we reach the final part of our exploration, I think it's time we focus on how family businesses can not just survive, but really thrive for generations to come.
It's funny, even with all those complexities we've talked about, family businesses really do have this incredible ability to not only endure, but to flourish.
They do. It's amazing.
It's like they tap into this deep well of resilience, right?
Right.
Drawing strength from those shared values, that sense of purpose, and of course, the enduring bonds of family.
Yeah. It's like a tree that's weathered countless storms. Its roots grow deeper, its branches reach higher with each passing season. But even the strongest tree can be vulnerable if certain threats aren't addressed.
That's true.
And the book actually highlights 3 main dangers that family businesses need to be aware of.
Okay, what are those?
Well, the first one is the gradual loss of control by the owners.
Loss of control. That's interesting.
And it often happens so subtly that nobody even realizes it's happening until it's too late. You know, decisions start being made by managers without consulting the owners. Dividends might stagnate. Board meetings become these routine rubber stamp affairs. And then those family members who aren't actively involved in the business, well, they just feel more and more excluded.
Yeah, it's like the family has become a passenger in a car they used to drive. They're watching the scenery go by, but they have no control over the direction.
That's a great analogy. And the book really emphasizes this idea. Families need to recognize those warning signs early on. They need to create a clear owner strategy, establish those effective governance structures, and communicate openly with management. Make sure their voices are heard, make sure their values are reflected in the company's decisions.
Take back the wheel.
Exactly. Now, the second danger the book highlights is the erosion of those core family values that often serve as the bedrock of the business.
Okay, how does that happen?
Well, it happens when the pursuit of profit becomes the primary motive, and it overshadows everything else. Short-term gains are prioritized over long-term sustainability.
Oh.
Ethical considerations, well, they kind of take a backseat. It's like slowly draining the color from this beautiful tapestry.
Yeah.
It leaves it faded and lifeless.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. Companies start with this noble mission, but then somewhere along the way, they lose sight of it.
It happens, and the book reminds us that family businesses have this incredible opportunity to operate differently.
How so?
Well, they can prioritize things like social responsibility, being good stewards of the environment, caring for their employees. They can create a culture that benefits not just the family, but the community as a whole.
Lead by example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the third danger the book highlights is complacency.
Complacency. Oh, that's a dangerous one.
It is. It's that dangerous assumption that everything will always be okay just because it's been okay in the past.
It's like thinking you can just coast on autopilot, not realizing the road ahead might be full of twists and turns.
Exactly. But markets change, competition gets tougher, new technologies emerge, and family businesses need to stay agile, adaptable, willing to evolve.
They need to be looking ahead, anticipating those challenges, and embracing innovation.
Absolutely. So we've identified some potential pitfalls, but how can family businesses actually avoid these dangers? Make sure their legacy stays strong for generations to come.
Well, the book offers some really practical advice. First, they need to create a strong owner group, a united front that can articulate a vision, set those expectations, and hold management accountable.
Okay, a strong owner group. Makes sense.
And that owner group needs to develop a clear owner strategy, like we talked about earlier, a roadmap for the future that outlines the purpose, the goals, the non-negotiables. And it should be a living document, revisited and revised as needed to stay relevant.
It's like having a compass to guide the business through those uncharted waters.
Love that analogy. Another piece of advice is to establish those effective governance structures, maybe a board of directors, an owner council, family meetings. The important thing is to have clear processes for making decisions, resolving conflicts, and ensuring everyone has a voice.
It's like creating a constitution for the business.
Exactly.
Wow.
And along with those structures, you need open communication, transparency, sharing information with everyone involved, family members, employees, stakeholders. Keep everyone in the loop, build trust, and that creates a sense of shared ownership.
That's so important, that open flow of information. Okay, what else?
Invest in the next generation. Provide them with opportunities for education, mentorship, leadership development. Prepare them to take the reins and lead with confidence.
Plant those seeds for the future.
Exactly. And perhaps most importantly, never lose sight of those core family values that have guided the business through thick and thin.
Those values, they're your compass, your anchor, your differentiator.
They're what make you unique. Don't let them fade away.
Family businesses, they definitely face unique challenges, but they also offer incredible rewards. The opportunity to work with your family, to build something truly meaningful together, and create a legacy that will last for generations.
It's a journey worth taking.
It is. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of family businesses, I want to leave our listeners with this final thought. Family businesses are complex systems, but within that complexity lies incredible strength, resilience, and the potential for lasting impact.
Embrace the challenges, nurture those relationships, and never stop learning.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into family businesses. Until next time.